Good morning, one and all. How the devil are you doing this fine day? I tell you what, I'm going to say good morning to Mark Fitz, who's watching apparently from a sunny Edgware Road in London. How have you got sunshine? It's dreary and overcast where I am, and I'm only about 10 miles up the road. But good morning, Mark. How are you doing, my friend? Ken Hatcher is here, and he's got pretty much what I've got. It could go either way today, I think. We could end up with sunshine. We could end up with a torrential downpour. I'm not sure which way the cards are going to fall. Jim Turner is in the house. Just excuse me while I choke to death. Gary Muirhead is in the house as well. I know Dan Cullen was here early doors, and I think Chris Ford was first off the mark when the show actually started, saying, "Morning, life without a phone was mighty quiet yesterday. I've got a bit of that coming up. I obviously when I'm out at sea, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. When I'm out at sea, no phone at all." Auto Trasporti has just said buongiorno to you too, and yeah, buonasera for later. That's all the Italian I've got. But good morning. Auto Trasporti. I wonder what they do. Sounds car-y, doesn't it? Sounds automotive. Good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Let me take that off the screen very quickly. Yeah, I did mention the fact, well, oddly enough, I've just been speaking Italian. The countdown is obviously underway. Just this show and then 3 more just like it, and I'm off. I will be off to, initially to Rome and then on down to the coast and then on to our cruise ship, initially heading for Naples, or Napoli, should I say, the spiritual home, and then probably the origin of the pizza. Yes, I will. Yes, I will be eating pizza while I'm there. I realise, I do have some diabetes to take care of, but when in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in Napoli, eat pizza. That's the way I see it. One thing I will tell you about the best part of 2 weeks that I'm away. I've sat down. I did promise I was going to do this as an evening show, but I've sat down over the past 3 or 4 days, and you know how I did the EDA study tour, and I brought you details of the places that we went to, so VTN, Trevi Benny, and all that kind of thing. Well, I filmed a lot more. So what I've actually done is I've created, I think there are 5 episodes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-record a live stream, and I'm going to drop them over the period that I'm away. So it won't be every day, because I'm away for about 10 days. It won't be every day, but there will be stuff dropping while I'm away. In addition to which, I've got another one. The first of those 5 is about 10 minutes long. The rest are about 4 or 5 minutes. And then I've got another one, which is an interview that I've been meaning to release, which I also filmed in Italy. I'll be releasing that as well. So, yes, about 6 different shows will happen while I'm away. Speaking of pizza, which we were, Mark Fitz has said ham and mushroom. I like ham and mushroom. I like any sort of pizza. Got to be honest, when I'm in Italy, generally just drop all the toppings entirely. Just go straight up margherita, because that's good enough. But I do like me a fungi. Pizza. A bit of mushroom on there. And our friend Haribo Starmix, not at school today, says, "Yes, I'm back. Welcome. Are you doing a pizza making tour?" No, I'm just doing a pizza eating tour. I find that's far more suited to my skills. And Dan Cullen, who was here at some ungodly hour this morning, 5:36, when I was actually sat on the sofa. Yeah, I won't bore you with the details. Stefan Edwards, who is usually in the Netherlands, as is our friend Haribo Starmix. Stefan Edwards, Haribo Starmix. I don't know how you say, introducing things in Dutch, but listen, there you are. Dan, question of the day. Yeah, there's a question of the day coming in just a moment, because I do need to say these words, because this is what I say at this time every single day. Dan, I'm going to answer this very quickly. What are you doing on the sofa at that time? It would be very simple. My last remaining boxer dog decided she needed to pee at some ungodly hour this morning, so let her out to do all of that, and then I fell asleep on the sofa. She went back to bed, and I fell asleep on the sofa. And our friend Haribo Starmix has just said, "Good morning, Stefan." There you are. See, the Dutch are getting down in the house. So, Dan, I know you want a question of the day. You're about to get it. Without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day at Dan's request, and get this show on the road. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of July. I'm just going to check. Yes, it is Tuesday, the 22nd of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, soon to be the taster of pizzas for the gentry or something. In today's show, getting high with Volvo wheel loaders. We're in the trenches with Kemroc, C'est magnifique. Just a master of languages. Cardem Demolition, that's what that's all about. And Demi Lition, she's been away for months and months and months. She's back again for the second time in about a week, and she's back this time to discuss the industrialisation of construction crime. Construction crime is now so rife; it is an industry in and of itself. Plus, in my morning monologue, the anatomy of a whistleblower, which kind of ties into the question of the day that I've already asked. Gary Goldsborough just joined us. Morning, Gary. How are you doing, mate? Good to see you here. Mark Whiting has just pitched up over here as well. Good morning, Mark. So, yes, there you are. Let me very quickly remind you of our question of the day, which, as I say, ties into today's morning monologue. And it looks like this. Yeah. As I say, it ties into today's morning monologue, but it also ties into all what is going on over on LinkedIn at the moment. The asbestos and allied demolition industry has in its midst a whistleblower. So my question of the day today is, would you ever be a whistleblower? I mean, I guess that's straight up yes or no answer, but I guess the bigger question is, what would drive you to it? Now, bearing in mind, I mean, and we will get into all this a bit later on, bearing in mind that you're basically committing career suicide, what would be required for you to say, that's it, that's where I draw a line in the sand, I'm going public, enough is enough? What would push you to that? And I do want to say good morning to Joe Brown Construction Company, LLC. Good morning, or hi, all the way from Philadelphia, home of the cheesesteak. I realise that it is only 10 past 10 here in the UK, but got to be honest, could take down a cheesesteak right about now. Probably not worth you sending one over, but but if you ever do, trust me, I will be grateful. What do we got here in the chat? Somebody just popped up. Ken Hatcher says, yes, he would turn whistleblower. What would make you do it though, Ken? Because, as I say, I don't want to give away the game too much because it is the morning monologue today. But what would make you do it? Bearing in mind that you're probably going to cut yourself off from your friends, your colleagues, your former employer, quite possibly even the entire industry that has given you a living over the years. What would be enough for you to say, that's it? That is it. I've taken enough and I can take no more. I'm going public with this. What would make you do that? I guess safety would be one. You know, if you're working for somebody or working within an industry where safety is consistently compromised, I think that would probably be enough. I think if I witnessed overt corruption, would probably be enough for me. If I witnessed drug sales and drug abuse on site, that would be enough to push me over the edge. But I'd love to hear from you. What would be enough to make you turn whistleblower? And our friend Mick has just arrived, who is not a whistleblower, but he has started a book. I don't know how far he's got, but he has a book that I think is a bit of a tell-all. Grazie. Invito una buona... I tell you what, autotrasporti, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to look that up because I don't actually know how to respond to that, but I promise I will come back to that. So, yes, there you are. Would you become a whistleblower? And if so, why? Let us kick the show off with a bit of... Yeah, we're going to get high right now with Volvo wheel loaders. Nothing to do with drugs. I was just talking about them. We're getting high with Volvo wheel loaders like this. Yeah, damn fine specimen, damn fine specimen. And apparently our friends over in Italy, Ultra Trasporti, were actually saying they were asking me to have a good day, which I intend to do, and I've just said grazie mille, because there's the third of the 3 bits of Italian that I do actually know. Yeah, we've got more to come. Got some fantastic Demolition coming up in just a moment after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, Demolition. We're going off to France now with the mighty Cardem, one of my all-time favourites demolition companies. This is grand and it's epic and it's 3 minutes long. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, kick off your shoes, sit back and enjoy. Wasn't that pretty? Music made it. Interesting how the mood can change things. I was playing around yesterday with some video and just putting different music to it. If that had I don't dubstep or heavy metal or something like that over the top of it, would have looked entirely different. Haribo Starmix, perfect question for a perfect time. Are you planning to go on holiday this summer? I am indeed. I am. I've got after today 3 more shows, and then I'm off for 2 weeks. I'm going on a cruise around the Mediterranean, just to answer that question. Starting in Naples, and we go to Sicily and some other places. I know we end up in Marseille at one point, Gibraltar, which I'm less enamored with, and then we end up in Barcelona. We've got I think a day in Barcelona, and then I'm jumping on a plane and coming home. So yes, we are taking a break. I kind of wish, I mean, I didn't realize I'm going to end up doing this 5.5 years. I kind of wish we'd done this show in seasons. I know we're working towards the 1,000th show, at which point we're going to rebrand and redesign and rejig things. But I really wish we'd done seasons. Season 1 for 2020 or 2020, season 2, because we could have then changed things up a little bit more regularly, and I don't know, and maybe taken some breaks along the way. That would have been nice. Didn't think it through, which is kind of my way entirely. I just said about the Cardem music being very pretty. Speaking of pretty, Demi Lition is our final film of the day. She's pretty, but we're going to get the fine folks at Kemroc out the way first, who are pretty in their own way. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
If you are going to battle in the trenches, you want the best equipment available to you. Think World War I, but also think proper trenching. Kemroc, take it away.
We had a project in LaGrange, Kentucky, and it was about 6 to 8 feet in depth of limestone, and it was about 800 feet long for a storm line. We were putting in 24-inch ADS pipe. We got started on it, and it was our first job we ever used a Kemroc chain cutter on. And we were operating the EK 150 on a 350 link belt, and we trenched 800 feet in 3 days. After that, we've only used chain cutters in Kemroc. We don't ever use any hoe ramming at all for our utility trenches. We would have had to use a hoe ram, or it would have been blasting, but Kenny and with CMC Construction, they have the Kemroc attachments and said, you've got to try this and you'll be really impressed. And after that, we've been sold on them ever since. Thousands of dollars. Not only were we able to backfill with the same material that we ground up from the chain cutter, normally when you're hoe ramming rock, the product, you either got to haul it off site, bury it, or you can't really use it. And we were able to actually backfill with the same product and not have to haul in any gravel or anything. So we saved a lot of money on this project. Oh, it's an easy 10. Absolutely, yeah. Easy to hook up, easy to operate. Once you find that sweet spot and how to run them, there's nothing else you'd want to use. It's been a 10. We had one issue with a new Kemroc they set up for us, and there was some hydraulic issues, and it was just a phone call, and they were there within 45 minutes and took care of us. "100% trust, and anytime we hit any type of rock in our trenches or anything, we're using a Kemroc. Absolutely."
Isaiah, thanks for the business. Thanks for supporting Kemroc and CMC. We look forward to projects in the future that we can help you on and make a lot of money.
I appreciate it. Thank you
so much.
Love the way the Americans go about their business. We're talking about crime in a moment, a bit more serious than our usual. Well, our usual fare is quite serious, but we're going to be back in just a moment with Demolition, talking about the industrialisation of crime. Yeah, there's a new report out that shows that crime within construction demolition, is so rife it is now an industry in its own right. We'll be right back after this. I just had this one from Ken, who says, I wanted to see Kemroc working. Well, there you are. You've seen Kemroc sort of working. The chat's been very quiet today. Is it okay? Is everybody chatting? or is there a problem? Because I'm not getting any messages coming through. Or are you just sat there wrapped with interest? Anyway, it is Demolition time. I've already told you what it's all about. Demi will explain all like this.
A new industry report from BowWatch reveals a disturbing trend. The UK's construction sector is being overrun by organized criminal networks, with site theft spiking by a staggering 67%, more than double the European average. High-value equipment and materials are no longer merely disappearing. They're being systematically hijacked and trafficked through black market operations. Nearly 1/3 of construction professionals say stolen goods are regularly circulated among these underground networks, and almost half have been directly approached by criminals offering so-called protection, a clear sign of growing intimidation and racketeering. The financial fallout is crushing. Insurance premiums are soaring, and 1/3 of workers are forced to personally replace stolen tools. Among the most targeted items, power tools, 52%, copper, 48%, and cables, 33%. But the most alarming shift is the criminal tactics themselves. These aren't opportunistic thefts. They're meticulously planned operations. Over 60% of respondents report that construction crime has become noticeably more sophisticated. Criminals are employing high-tech methods like hacking into CCTV systems, launching cyber attacks, deploying drones for reconnaissance, and even cloning digital access credentials. UK firms have stepped up security. About half now use fixed CCTV, a level of vigilance twice the European norm. But as criminals adopt drones and cyber tools, traditional security measures are struggling to keep pace. BowWatch Managing Director Mim Mogul says, "This is no petty theft anymore. It is the industrialization of construction crime. Calculated, network-driven, and affecting more than just assets. They're disrupting schedules, inflating costs, and even impacting the mental health of tradespeople, particularly those running small operations." The report calls for a layered defense approach, combining physical barriers, advanced technology, cyber protection, thorough staff training, and intelligence sharing with law enforcement. Without this comprehensive strategy, the construction industry remains dangerously exposed to a new breed of criminal enterprise. This is Demi Lition reporting for The Break Fast Show.
Thank you, Demi. I do need to answer the question from Ken Hatter, who says, is she real? She's not. No, she is an AI. She is an AI. A very good AI, I have to say. Wish there was some way that I could change her outfit every once in a while. Not for my own personal pleasure, but, just to bring the changes a little bit. But that's the one I'm stuck with. But no, she is a fiction. She's a myth. She's a legend. She's an enigma. Shouldn't have read the thesaurus at 5 o'clock this morning. Andy Thornton, thankfully, saying all good, just watching. Apparently, yes, the chat is watching. The chat is working. People are just watching. I'm okay with that. Chris Ford, going back to our question of the day, which is, would you become a whistleblower? Which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Depends on the circumstances. Generally, no, but there again, depending on who and how it affects people, yes. I think I'd be the same. I wouldn't go looking for it necessarily. I mean, I guess to a degree, being a journalist and stuff, part of my job is to shine a light on the truth rather than that which people would prefer you to know. So I guess I'm vaguely a whistleblower, but not completely. Dan Collins says, great video, Cardem. Yeah, I agree. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return with my morning monologue, which is a little bit longer than usual. So please be patient. I'll be back after. What makes someone become a whistleblower? What makes someone come clean about what they know? What makes them turn their back on friends, colleagues, and employers, and even the very industry that once afforded them a decent living and kept a roof over their heads? There are many reasons that run the whole gamut from the selfish to the selfless, and stopping off at the self-preservation along the way. But the main drivers for turning whistleblower can be broken down into three main categories. There are those that turn whistleblower for vengeance. A disgruntled former employee, for example, who believes they've been poorly treated or slighted in some way. There are those that turn whistleblower for financial gain in the pursuit of a payment to secure their silence over something they know that others might prefer to keep under wraps. And then there's the third kind, the noble kind. The, the whistleblower not as a malevolent force, but as a force for good, or perceived good at least. Those that bravely choose to come clean to improve things, to reveal and right a wrong, to hopefully make a positive difference regardless of the personal cost. And there have been some noble examples over the years. Back in 1971, Daniel Ellsberg leaked classified documents proving the US government had misled the public about the Vietnam War. That revelation sparked a national crisis of trust in government and played a role in ending the war. In 1974, lab technician Karen Silkwood exposed nuclear industry safety violations at a company called Kerr-McGee. She later died under mysterious circumstances en route to meet a journalist. Her story was eventually told in the movie Silkwood, in which she was portrayed by Meryl Streep. In 1996, Jeffrey Wigand turned whistleblower on the tobacco industry, revealing that tobacco companies knew that nicotine was addictive. He ultimately testified in major lawsuits and featured in the movie The Insider. And then most recently, back in 2013, former National Security Agency intelligence contractor Edward Snowden leaked classified documents revealing the existence of global surveillance programs. He was charged with violating the US's Espionage Act and was eventually forced to seek asylum in Russia, where he is now a naturalized citizen. Whatever the industry, the circumstances, or the motivation, the act of whistleblowing carries with it a certain bravery, an unspoken virtue. Because however they deliver the message, the chances are they are committing an act of irreversible self-ostracization. They're instantly and knowingly cutting themselves off from their friends, their colleagues, and their peers. There's a strange nobility in that whistleblowing, a quiet, cold kind of nobility, one forged in silence, exile, and the knowledge that doing what's right might cost you everything. Some whistleblowers come forward with damning documents, others risk their health to reveal contamination or corner cutting. Some simply say out loud what everyone else already knows, but no one dares to admit. And with that single act, they break ranks. They become other, a threat, a liability, a traitor. At first, there's the hope that someone will listen, that justice will prevail. But often, the emails stop. Friends avert their eyes, whisper in corners, distance themselves as if integrity were contagious and deadly. Those who once stood shoulder to shoulder with them turn their backs, terrified of being tarred with the same brush. And still, the whistleblowers speak out. The cost is not only social. Many lose their jobs, some lose their careers, some even sacrifice their families. There are endless legal fees, the sleepless nights, the stress-related illnesses, the knowledge that future employers will see their whistleblowing not as a badge of honor, but as a red flag. Not brave, but difficult. Not principled, but disloyal. Some are sued. Others are followed. Some are threatened quietly or violently. Their mental health can crack. Their relationships suffer. In some cases, they're surveilled by the very institutions they try to protect. In others, they lose their homes, their pensions, and their peace. And still, they press forward. Why? Why take the risk? Why stand alone in the storm? Because truth matters. Because people matter. Because profits cannot be allowed to trump human life or decency or law. Because the corner that was cut could kill someone. Because the figure buried in a spreadsheet could destroy a family. Because silence is complicity. Because integrity is more important than fear. Safety is more important than greed. Whistleblowers generally don't set out to be adversaries. Most don't wake up craving conflict. Most of them are insiders, loyalists, people who believed in the mission, the company, and the industry, people who tried to fix things from the inside and only went public when every door was slammed shut. Jeffrey Wigand didn't plan to take on big tobacco. Sharon Watkins didn't want to bring down Enron. They came forward because they could no longer live the lie, because they saw the damage being done and they knew they had to act. Whistleblowers often emerge from the very heart of the system. They're not outsiders, they're not radicals. They're people who believed in the values their organizations claim to stand for. And that betrayal cuts deep. Not just the betrayal they feel, but the betrayal others project onto them. They're seen as turncoats, as the ones who brought the shame or the scandal. Never mind that the wrongdoing was already there. They're blamed for shining a light on it. It's easier to punish the messenger than to confront the message. But here's the most bitter pill of all. Whistleblowers shouldn't be necessary. If industries operated with genuine transparency, if leadership welcomed scrutiny instead of suppressing it, if internal processes were robust, honest, and safe, people wouldn't have to go public. The existence of whistleblowers is not a sign of integrity within a system, it's a sign of failure. Every time a person is forced to choose between their livelihood and the truth, the system has failed. Every time a company covers up instead of correcting, retaliates instead of reflecting, the system has failed. Every time a whistleblower is ruined while the guilty go free, the system has failed. So yes, many whistleblowers are brave. Some are noble even. They're necessary, but they shouldn't have to be. If businesses and industries operated as they were supposed to, whistleblowers would have nothing to blow their whistles about. Now, as we're all aware, a self-styled whistleblower is currently stirring things up in the asbestos industry. He unquestionably talks a good fight and clearly has an axe to grind. Quite what drove him to spill the beans, we're still not entirely sure. Whether his motives are self-serving or altruistic is also unknown at this point. One thing no one can argue, though, the demolition, construction, and asbestos industry has created precisely the kind of fertile environment required to spawn a whistleblower. If the industry is looking for someone to blame for his sudden emergence, they need only look in the mirror. The Anatomy of a Whistleblower. There you are, brought to you by me. I had some fun writing that one yesterday. I quite enjoyed the research. Let's have a look. What have we got? What have we got here? Wow, here's a blast from the past. Here's a blast. Gaz Evans, model maker to the stars. Morning, Gaz. How are you doing, my friend? I don't know how you keep up with the demand. I watch you on LinkedIn and think, man alive, do you sleep? Do you ever sleep? Keep up the good work, though. So, question today. Yes, I would over bullying, safety conditions, and health conditions in workplace if managers were turning a blind eye. It's over asbestos, he also says as well. And also the abuse of power. I wonder about that. The abuse of power. How much of that are we seeing? Who's a poppin' says, who's been whistleblowing? Well, if you're in the industry, you probably already know the answer to that. But if you're not, go and have a look at LinkedIn. Type asbestos expert. See what comes up. It's the moral dissonance between personal integrity and institutional silence. It's the conscience refusing to be anaesthetized, says Andy Thornton, being very, very philosophical about things. As I said in the question of the day, I think we all see, site level, office level, mainly office level, because that's where I've always worked. You kind of look at it and you think, that probably shouldn't go on. It does take a certain bravery, a certain virtue, a certain nobility to say, do you know what? There's the line in the sand. I will not go beyond this point. And if I can't get those those that work with me, those that work above me, the industry within which I'm working, if they will not listen, then I'll have no opportunity, no choice but to go public. Haribo Starmick says, I watch, listen while packing my bags for holiday. Very helpful and calming. Thank you very much indeed. Where are you going on holiday? Somewhere nice, I hope. Dan says, wow, that's unbelievable. Demi Lition, she's Ken's Barbie. There's a thought. You missed my question today. No, I didn't. Just took a long while for me to shut up about whistleblowing and what have you. I wonder about, I'm sat here trying to be all brave and noble and stuff. Have I ever spoken out in a professional sense as a journalist? Yes, I have. I continue to be the only person in the demolition circles to talk about the CMA investigation of various other bits and pieces. I'm the only one that reports on fatalities within the demolition industry, and nobody else does, because they prefer to take the more positive route. So I guess to a degree I've done that. But yeah, I mean, I've seen some dodginess going on, not just in this industry, but in other parts of the industrial world. Have I ever spoken out? Not really. Not really. Our friend Haribo Starmix is going to the border between France and Spain in the beautiful mountains. You'll have a fantastic time. Just trying to remember. I've driven from the UK down through France, past. Would that be the Alps? I guess it would be the Alps, and then slung a right and went down to Spain. So you are going to a lovely part of the world. I'll go back to the monologue, though, the notion of whistleblowers. And I will reiterate, if the industry were transparent, and if it were also possible to speak out without fear of retaliation or retribution. For example, I mean, we've talked about this before. I had a call from somebody seeking my advice. They clearly don't know me very well, because I can barely manage my own life, let alone managing somebody else's. But somebody called me to say, "What would you do in this situation?" And what they said was they'd witnessed both the sale and the use of drugs on site. And my suggestion was, well, go to your site supervisor, the project manager, whatever it might be, and express your concerns. And he said, I was planning to do that, but the project manager is actually one of the people that's involved in selling the drugs. Where do you go from there? Do you go over their heads? If you go over their heads, what will be the reaction? Are you sure that you will get a positive feedback from your employer, or will they phone up the project manager and say, one of your lads has been on the phone about you? And what is the fallout then? Do they make your life a living hell? Probably. Mick says, truth be known, most of us are guilty of one thing or another in the construction and demolition industry by either turning a blind eye or just ignoring things. Sooner or later, someone will blow the whistle through greed or just spite. Yeah, there is greed, and listen, I'm sure there are whistleblowers that have done so for personal financial gain. There is spite, if you are a disgruntled former employee rather, then I'm sure there is a temptation to go back after your employer to try to seek some kind of retribution. But what about the other things? And I think you made a really important point there, Mick. Guilty by turning a blind eye. Here's a thought. Let's just set the whole whistleblowing thing to one side, but let's talk about that blind eye thing for a second. If you are working on a demolition site or a construction site and you see something that you believe to be a potential hazard, a risk, a danger, and it's not something you can fix yourself, do you report it? Do you go up the line and say there's a thing there that needs to be sorted, whether it's a procedure, a process, an open manhole, whatever it might be? Do you go and report that, or do you keep quiet? And if you do keep quiet, and I fully understand, nobody wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to be going to their boss saying, "Oh, that's wrong too, that needs fixing." Nobody wants to be that guy. But if you don't do that, and then somebody is hurt, maimed, or potentially even killed, how do you live with yourself? If you know that they have succumbed, serious injury, or possibly even died as a result of you keeping stum, how do you live with yourself? Mick says, further to that, if even a part of what this fellow is saying or been putting down in writing, then I can see one thing happening, the whole industry will be totally bugged. Yeah, I wonder. I'm having to tread a very fine line at the moment with this whole whistleblower thing. Partly because, as it stands at the moment, I said this yesterday, partly as it stands at the moment is because he's saying a lot of things But because he's supposedly got a book coming out, there is no substantiating evidence that can prove that now, I mean, in absolute truth, that in my heart of hearts, because he's named names and he's named jobs and he's named people, if what he was saying was untrue, the chances are he'd have been slapped with a libel suit by now, or done for slander, or whatever it might be. So the suggestion is that what he is saying is at least based in truth, but without the supporting evidence, as I say, I'm having to tread a fine line. It's the very reason I'm not mentioning him by name. I mean, I had a phone call between us friends here. I had a phone call that didn't warn me against covering the story, but advised against it. Yeah, you need to be careful with this one. And I took it on board. It's somebody I respect an enormous amount, and I've really had to. I often shoot from the hip when I write. I write a thing, upload, fire it out, tell everybody. The stuff that I've been doing, including the one that I've done today, I wrote it and then I walked away and I came back and I rewrote it. And I walked away and I came back and I rewrote it again, because I am treading a very fine line at the moment. But as Mick has said, if there is even a smattering of truth to what this guy is saying, the CMA investigation will look like small beer by comparison. Because he's not just naming individuals, he's naming companies, and he's also naming clients as well, including some very, very, very big household name type clients. Yeah, we could be talking a major shakeup. Andy says the Milgram experiment shows how difficult it is to go against institutional authority. I've never heard of the Milgram experiment. I wonder what that's all about. I need to go and look that up. But it is. When you think about what you're actually doing to become a whistleblower. So imagine you're on site today. One of you guys is on site today, and you see a thing that you think, that is it. That is the step too far. That right there, that thing that I've just witnessed, is the straw that broke the camel's back. By you coming clean, you are basically isolating yourself from all of the people that you work with, quite possibly from all the people you've ever worked with, quite possibly from all the people you're ever likely to work with. There is every possibility it will have major financial implications. So you could end up, unable to find work, unable to pay your bills, unable to afford your rent or your mortgage, which could then lead to the breakup of a relationship. And so it goes on. We are talking major implications. And I realize this is a strange connection to draw. My defense of migrants crossing the channel in small boats. If you're willing to put your life at risk to cross one of the busiest shipping channels in the world in the middle of winter with your child, the chances are what you've left behind must be pretty bloody shit. I would say the same here. If you are willing to sacrifice your job, your livelihood, the industry that you've worked in for so long, potentially your house, potentially your livelihood, potentially your family, whatever was going on must have been pretty shit. Mick says, Mark, if this is about what was said in the Tower 42-bit, then there is going to be a downfall of these people. And if for nothing else, the security services will be involved. Yeah. Oh yeah, this goes way beyond just asbestos and demolition. We are talking political. If they're not already, yeah, absolutely. Dan Cullen says, spent an hour last night cleaning a machine. Another operator was on and greased it to 2 tubes and 1 bag of rubbish. And they call them operators. Andy Thornton says, Milgram experiment was where a man in a white coat asked someone to electrocute with increasing voltages someone who got a question wrong. Oh, see, it depends who sat in the seat. Listen, if there was Piers Morgan, I wouldn't even bother with the experiment. I'd crank it up to max and let him have it with both barrels. But I take your point. Yeah, I do take your point. As I say, there is a bravery, there is a nobility to it, if it is done for altruistic reasons. And again, going back to our friend who is currently tooting his whistle in the demolition and construction and asbestos industry, we don't actually know his motives at the moment. By all accounts, he was a managing director, so I'd be very surprised if it was down to employment, because you'd have thought he could have taken his skill set elsewhere and started again, or whatever it might be. I wonder if it was just that's it. I've because everyone must have a breaking point, surely. Everyone must have a point where you go, no, that's it, that's me done. And I guess some people, I know people that have literally just said, no, that's it, I'm going to walk away from this industry. And maybe there is a temptation to do the opposite. I'm going to walk away, but if I go down, I'm taking a good few people with me. Is that altruistic? Don't know. Yes, I wonder how many people would turn over things like this and over being screwed by an employer. I think being screwed by an employer, I've had it in such a low level way, it's hardly worth talking about. But I think being screwed over by an employer, you know, if you're the right age and you've got some skills about you and you've been around for a little while, if you are screwed over by an employer, the chances are you can quickly find another employer and just change allegiances. I think that would be fairly straightforward. Again, I would ask, you know, what is it that would be enough of a trigger, not just to say, I've had it with this company, I'm going to go and work for somebody else, for you to say, I've had it with this company, I've had it with this industry, I'm going to go public and I'm going to tell everyone what this is all about. It'd have to be something pretty substantial, wouldn't you? If only I could do it all anonymously, I would have a few stories to tell. Listen, I mean, I don't want to encourage this kind of thing because, you know, ultimately, I am a believer in the demolition and construction industry. I realise it's far from perfect, but I am a believer in it. But when you think about things like the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority, they actually have a system of anonymity, and in fact, that they offer. I think they offer a reward if you come clean about something that breaches their rules. They also offer you protection. You know, so if you are directly or indirectly linked to some sort of breach of competition law, and you are the first person to say, I'm waving a flag over here, we Houston, we have a problem, you will receive some sort of immunity from any future prosecution. So if what you're talking about there, Dan, is that kind of thing, the CMA have probably got you covered. I go over their heads, I wouldn't care as lives are at risk. Drugs and alcohol on site and people on the road too, yeah. There's a good example. You know, if Dan, you change sites and employers on a fairly regular basis. If you arrived on a site and within a day or two you realised that there was some drug abuse going on your site, what would be your course of action? Particularly if it turned out that your site supervisor, for example, was part of the deal. If he was abusing drugs, selling drugs, both, what would you do? If it's a health and safety issue, there should not be a problem reporting it. Nobody deserves to be hurt. The problem is, and I'm sure we've all heard this in the past, where you know we have had instances of people being blackballed and blacklisted for having spoken out about safety concerns. Because when you, I think when you do it once, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll look at that. When you do it 2, 3, 10 times, it's like, oh Jesus, it's this guy again. He really is a pain in my ass. How quickly can we get him out of the door? And then once you've been fired or urged towards the exit, what do they do after that? You know, somebody phones up and says, we've got a bloke applying for a job here. Apparently he worked for you before. What was he like? Well, he was punctual, good operator, but man alive, he gets on your tits because he's constantly griping about something. Does that help your future employment prospects? I would suggest not. Exactly. I couldn't live with myself if anything happened. I wonder how many people are living with themselves in the hope that nothing happens, that have seen something that is, you know, a corner cutting, a health and safety risk, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, whatever it might be, you know, something that could potentially save an injury or prevent an injury or save a life. And they've decided, given the the hierarchy, given the politics on the site and within the company that they work, they think I should report it, but I'm not going to. I'll tuck that one under my hat, sweep it under the rug. I wonder how many people are doing that right now. 2.5 million people or more employed within the UK demolition and construction industry. I wonder how many are aware of something that they, given a level playing field, given an environment where their livelihood today and their future livelihood didn't hinge upon those above. I wonder how many would just say, that needs sorting. Dan says, great show today, Mark. Well done. It's a fine line that counts. Yeah, it is. As I say, I mean, just imagine you saw that, I don't know, a loose scaffold board or an open manhole cover, and you think, no, I'll keep it to myself. You know, I've probably moaned a bit too much this week. I'll keep that to myself. And then you hear the sirens and the ambulance arrives to cart off one of your work colleagues because they've fallen victim to that loose scaffold board or the open manhole cover. What then? How do you go back to work knowing you could have prevented that? Yeah. Anyway, people, that's enough. There are 3 more of these to come, and then I'm off for 10 days, so don't forget that. I'm going to be back tomorrow at 10 a.m, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, assuming I don't end up sleeping half the night on the sofa again. But I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, everybody, stay safe, look after yourselves. I'll see you on the morrow. Tatty bye.